Welcome to a brand new episode of Greentech Pulse. Today we'll be talking about something we haven't talked about yet on the podcast, which is wood waste, how wood waste is handled. Today to discuss that with us would be Todd Thomas. Todd Thomas is the founder of Woodchuck. Woodchuck is a wood waste diversion and clean energy platform. So he's going to tell us how Woodchuck handles wood waste and everything they are doing to make the planet more sustainable. So welcome to Green Tech Pulse, Todd.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start with your journey because it's actually interesting. What got you interested in wood waste of all things specifically?
The genesis really starts with North Star Clean Energy. North Star Clean Energy is the public electrical utility for the state of Michigan. And they have three energy plants in Michigan that have the capacity to burn biomass to produce energy. But at the time, they did not have enough biomass. And so they were forced to augment their fuel supply with petroleum, either oil or coal. Um, and what they really wanted was to get completely off of fossil fuels and go 100% biomass. At the same time, they see the need to double their energy production in the state of Michigan over the next 10 years. So they were really looking at how can they generate enough biomass to be 100% biomass today and for the next 10 years as they double their output. So they were trying to figure out how to do that. So they engaged with us, and we came up with the hypothesis that there was a massive latent supply of wood waste that's in the construction and manufacturing industries. That right now, all of that wood waste is simply going to landfills. And if we could identify that wood waste and divert it out of the waste streams, so not send it to the landfill and instead process it into biomass, that biomass could be a fantastic feedstock for bioenergy production. And it really would then solve two really huge problems, right? We've got a massive waste problem. And this isn't just in the United States or North America or Europe. It's really a global problem. We have way too much waste. Landfills are being filled up. Nobody wants more landfills. So how do we reduce that waste? And at the same time, we need more energy. The global demand for energy is the same thing that's happening in Michigan is happening everywhere in the world. Most folks think we're going to need to double energy production globally in the next 25 years. So by connecting those two problems, it creates a really elegant solution. If we can divert wood out of waste streams to reduce waste and then turn that wood into energy, it solves both problems. So it's really kind of an elegant and beautiful solution. So we launched Woodchuck with that premise, and it's gone very well. We've gotten fantastic response from construction companies and manufacturing companies that want to reduce their cost and reduce their reliance on landfills. And then our energy partners love the feedstock that it provides. And it really allows them to grow their energy production with a renewable and reliable source of clean wood.
Okay, so I think I got that to work with construction and manufacturing companies who produce a lot of wood waste. So Woodchuck, how does Woodchuck work with these companies? What's the deal like with them?
So we kind of take over their waste management. And we actually put multiple waste containers on given sites. You can imagine a construction site or a manufacturing facility. Instead of having a single dumpster where they throw all of their waste and then that waste goes to the landfill, instead we put multiple containers. And we have one container for wood and one container for cardboard and one for plastic. And we separate out those materials. And that's where the AI comes in. So we have AI image recognition cameras that we put on the dumpsters to help us make sure we're getting the correct material in each dumpster. And that pre-sorting really drives a lot of efficiencies. It works really well and allows us to then divert those materials. The cardboard and the plastic we recycle, and the wood we process and turn into clean energy. So it works really well. And by getting value out of the waste, we're actually able to reduce our clients' costs. Typically, for an average construction company or an average manufacturing company, we reduce their waste costs by 30% or more.
Well, so that's reducing the cost of them and having someone else pick the waste, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And instead of taking their waste and sending it to the landfill, we can reduce their cost and turn that waste into something valuable.
Wow, I think why I ask is because I think I've talked to a couple of people who have a similar model. So they usually deal with one for biogas, I think from farms, from methane from farms, and another one for that they make carbon too from factories and coal. So it's actually a very interesting way to look at everything. So when before you mentioned using an AI cameras to detect the waste and detect that you're picking out the right things from the waste. Before this technology was available, what was used in sorting this waste, and why wasn't that good enough compared to these AI cameras?
Well, there's a couple pieces to that. The first is the reality is all of that waste right now is going to landfills. Very, very little of it actually gets diverted or recycled, or it goes to landfill. Um, Various companies have tried to figure out a way to take commingled trash. So that big dumpster that is behind the building, behind the company, and everybody just throws everything in there, and it's all mixed together. And then they pull that dumpster and bring it to a separation plant where they try to separate all of those different materials. It's really difficult. It's labor intensive. It's inefficient. It's very costly. And honestly, nobody's figured out a way to do that cost effectively. It just doesn't work. And the reality is, if something's going to be actually sustainable, it needs to be economically sustainable as well. If it is not economically sustainable, if it's not feasible long term economically, then literally by definition, it's not sustainable, right? So we need to find sustainable solutions that are economically viable as well, because then they are actually sustainable. So what we do is kind of strategically, operationally different. We separate those materials before they're commingled, before they get all mixed together and junked together, because that's the difficult part. Separating them after the fact, nobody's figured out a way to do that, where the math pencils. So we use the AI to separate all those materials in advance. And that works much better. It does take a little bit more room, but if you've got the room for multiple dumpsters, which we found most of our clients do, then we can pre-sort those materials and get much better, higher use out of those materials that we can separate off.
Okay, so now looking at your AI system, your AI vision system, how accurate is it now? And are there any improvements you're working on it?
Sure. I mean, we're a startup. So we launched 18 months ago. And so my co founder and I, this is the third company we've done together. And this is the third AI platform that we built together. So that helped a lot. So we were able to get our MVP up and running in about 90 days. The first thing we had to do was teach the AI what a dumpster was. Then we had to teach it how full it was. And then we started to teach it what the different materials were. And, it's a learning process. Actually, there was a funny day. We built a really cool prototype, our own prototype of our own image recognition capture system. And the first day that we deployed it in Michigan. And so we set our cameras up, and the next morning we popped open the portal and started looking at the results, and it was all gobbledygook. We got nothing, and we're like, "What the hell's going on?" And it had snowed that night, so our dumpster was covered in snow, and the AI had no idea what to do. So we had to kind of adjust on the fly, and we have since we now capture images all day long in different lighting conditions and different weather conditions. So everything needs to work wherever it is, whatever the weather conditions are. So that was just one of those on the fly learnings. But luckily that happened really early on in the process, so we've been able to adjust and continue to learn. So now we're at the stage where we are teaching our system all the different materials, so we can identify, do we have the right material in this container, or is there contaminants in there? Um, and we capture thousands of images a day, and we tag all those images, and so we've built a pretty large proprietary image database, and our algorithms are getting pretty accurate. I would say we're above 90% now. We're going for 99%, and I think we will get there later this year. So the system is the more it learns, the faster it learns. So we're very happy with our progress to date. But of course, we're still a startup. We're still learning. But yeah, we're happy with where we are, and we're happy with where we think we'll be in the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months.
Okay, I actually love when it talks about the snow because that's one thing when you're building, the least thing you expect just happens out of the blue. A
Yeah.
lot of the
Yeah.
time. Yeah. So now you mentioned that you separate the wood from the rest of the waste before it's commingled with everything else. So can you walk us through what happens with that wood waste when it's separated or identified up till when it gets to its final destination? I know you mentioned them burning it as biomass.
Yeah. So once we have separated that wood, then we will bring that wood to our facility and we will again use AI at that point. And we'll use the AI to confirm the quality of the material that we have. So if we believe we have relatively clean wood, we will confirm that upfront with the AI before we start processing it. And what we want the AI to tell us at that point is what is the potential of this raw wood. A lot of raw wood, like pallets. Pallets are great. We love pallets. Pallets can be processed fairly easily. We can run it over a magnet to pull out the metal, and then we'll recycle the metal. We can run it through a couple of drums to get out any sawdust or any cement or residual, and we can generate really clean biomass. But there are some contaminants that are permanent, like if it has fire retardant in it, or chemical preservatives, or oil-based paints. Those are kind of permanent contaminants in terms of wood. And so for that wood, we will process it differently because that wood, if it has permanent contaminants, it can't be used for energy production because it doesn't burn clean enough. So we use that for other industrial products, but we want to know that up front. So we only do the minimal processing required. So we're driving as much efficiency as possible. So the AI will tell us if we have clean wood that has the potential to be good energy feedstock, or if it is permanent contaminants and need to be used for some other purpose. So we'll do that up front. Then we will actually process that wood. And once it's processed, then we call it biomass. And once we have that biomass, we will again use the AI to confirm the quality of the biomass. And again, what we want the AI to tell us is, what is the current quality of this biomass, and can it be further improved with further processing? So we use the AI to do that because particularly once you have the processed biomass, it gets difficult for a human to just look at it and know how clean it is and what the quality is. But AI is really good at that. I mean, image recognition, you can also call it computer vision, is fantastic at seeing a level of detail that's beyond just the human visual interpretation. And we've seen that for years in medical field and in manufacturing quality assurance. So it's really a pretty mature technology from that standpoint. And we're simply taking that existing AI and applying it to a new vertical that prior to Woodchuck was fairly devoid of technology, so fairly ripe for disruption. So this simply taking kind of existing matured image recognition and applying it to biomass processing is really driving considerable efficiencies. So we reduce our processing cost, and at the same time we really maximize the potential use of that biomass. If we can get it clean enough, if we can get it, 5 nines, then we can actually use that for remanufacturing. We can turn it into particle board or press board. If it can't quite be that clean, then we can use it for energy production. And like I said, if we can't get it clean enough for energy production, if it has contaminants that can't be removed, there are still industrial products that we can use. And actually, hydrogen is a pretty cool option. Um, the pyrolysis, the gasification to generate hydrogen uses really high temperatures. Excuse me. And so those really high temperatures break down a lot of those toxins. So fire retardants, preservative, oil-based paints, the really high temperatures of hydrogen production can break those down into their basic elements: oxygen, hydrogen, carbon. And then the hydrogen can be sucked off for energy use. The carbon can be solidified and used in other industrial products like cement or asphalt, or can be simply sequestered. So by using hydrogen as one of your potential offtakes, you really can start to approach zero landfill or zero waste.
So I think I can see you use technology a lot in your platform, and doing some research, I found out that your platform tracks the waste from the origin to the final use, which you said can be biomass, particle board, remanufacturing, or whatever. So when you're tracking this waste, what metrics are you measuring, and why are those metrics you're measuring important?
So at the end of the day, what we want to know is the total tonnage of material that's diverted. What actually happens to that material? We want to know the net CO2 diverted. So to calculate the net CO2 diverted, we can calculate the CO2 diverted by ton of material, and then we'll add back in any CO2 that's released during transportation or processing. And that will give us a net CO2 avoided number. And then, of course, if it goes to remanufacturing, we can track that by ton. If it goes to energy, we can track either the BTUs or megawatts of clean energy that's produced. So we can get really detailed reports. And there's huge value in that to a lot of different companies. For our clients, the construction companies and the manufacturing companies, that's data that right now they generally don't have access to. Typically right now, most of that waste just goes to the landfill. Even if they do have a theoretical recycling process, typically that material goes to a transfer center where theoretically it is separated and sent to the correct location. But the reality is once it goes into a transfer center, it's basically a black box and nobody knows what happens to it. But if you put a journalist up on the hill and he watches with binoculars, the reality is it all goes to the landfill. Very little actually gets to recycle. So one of the big strengths of the Woodchuck platform is we actually track every single material from the moment we take control of it until its final destination. And we tell you exactly where it ended up. And we want a sustainable outcome for any material that we take control of. So if it's wood, we're not going to send any of our wood to the landfill. It'll go to remanufacturing, energy production, or other industrial products, but none of it will go to landfill. Cardboard and plastic will all be recycled. So none of it will go to a landfill. And then if we have other materials that can't be recycled or used for energy production, we're developing multiple hydrogen partnerships that will allow us to generate hydrogen with that. So we really want to be able to get to zero waste and to help our clients get to zero waste and be able to document all of that for them.
Okay, so I think those are interesting statistics. The net CO2 diverted per ton of waste, as well as the BTUs of clean energy for those that are burnt at biomass. So, have you seen any of the companies you work with make any surprising discoveries? Because, like you said previously, they just gather the waste and send it to landfill. They probably maybe just know how many tons of waste went to landfill. But this time, you're getting all this data for them. So, have you seen any of them make any surprising discoveries from this data you gather from the wastes you're processing for them?
Every time. Most of the folks we work with don't know their volumes of waste. They know they've got dumpsters out back and the dumpsters get pulled ever so often and they're gone, but they don't really, most folks don't have quantifiable numbers of how much waste they have, particularly if you start looking at it by material type. Like if you have a 40-yard dumpster that leaves your site every week, how much of that is wood? How much is cardboard? How much is plastic? How much is metal? Most companies don't know. So just by providing that information, that's great to know. But the other thing is we will typically start any project with a waste stream audit. So look at what are all the materials you have on your site and where do you think it's going right now? And what we found is a lot of our clients think certain waste streams are being recycled when in fact they aren't. And the most glaring example that we find almost every business we go to is plastic. All right. So virgin clear plastic, that plastic shrink wrap that goes around every pallet, you see it all over the place. That's really valuable. If you separate that plastic and you bale it up, there's a good market for that. You can recycle it and turn it into other products, and you can provide a nice discount back to your client for recycling that. But the reality is, on most job sites, almost all, that clear plastic wrap gets commingled with those black binders that go around the pallet. Those black binders, there's not a lot you can do with those. And when you mix those two together, well, now all of a sudden you have commingled waste and it goes to the landfill. None of it's getting recycled. So the trick to diversion and recycling is separating your materials into useful materials, whether that's plastics or metals or wood. If you can separate the materials, there are offtakes and there is value for most of those materials, but you can't have it all mixed together. If you've got a pallet of wood and you've got some clear plastic and some dark plastic and you've got some cardboard and you got a couple cinder blocks in there, well, that's just trash. But if you separate it all out, the wood is future energy. The cardboard can be recycled. The plastic can be recycled into all sorts of different products. It all has value if you can properly separate it. And it's by driving that additional value that creates the efficiencies and drives the cost reductions for the construction company and for the manufacturing company. And by separating out that wood and generating that biomass, that creates the new renewable, sustainable supply chain for a bioenergy producer. So there's benefits on both sides if you handle the processing in the middle correctly. And the AI just greatly improves our ability to handle those materials properly and get the highest best use for each of those material streams.
Okay, so let's go back to biomass, bioenergy. When you look at the bioenergy derived from wood waste, how does this compare to other sources of renewable energy, especially in terms of reliability, in terms of output too?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, everybody's looking for the silver bullet that's going to solve our energy problem, and I think the reality is there is no silver bullet. It's kind of we need to look locally. What are your local options, and get the combination of local resources that's going to work best. So solar and wind are wonderful. They're very clean, but they are inherently intermittent, right? Sometimes the wind's blowing, sometimes it's not. Sun shines during the day, it doesn't shine at night. So wind and solar are awesome, but they also require significant infrastructure and storage. Oil and gas and coal, of course, are very available, but they release a lot of carbon. Nuclear is really interesting, and I think we're seeing people turn back to nuclear, especially with some of the developments around mini reactors or molten salt reactors, which can be much cleaner and much safer. So there are a lot of options around that, but we're probably decades away from a true nuclear future. And if we can, in fact, solve fusion, like nuclear fusion could actually be the single silver bullet that gives us a clean, abundant energy future where energy is no longer a problem we need to talk about. And there are a lot of startups that are working on that. The problem with that is to ignite a fusion reaction takes a tremendous amount of energy. And we're just kind of on the cusp of trying to figure out how can we ignite a fusion reaction and generate a energy positive net energy. So I think that will come. I don't think we'll necessarily enjoy that in our lifetime. Well, you may be younger than me, Peter, but I probably won't enjoy it in my lifetime, but I think my kids might. I think my kids might have a clean energy fusion future. But right now, today, where we are today, what are our real options? So solar and wind are great, but they're intermittent. The great thing about biomass is you can store biomass and you can ramp up biomass quickly and easily when you need more energy production. So we're seeing more and more energy companies that are looking at kind of the triad of wind, solar, and biomass. So they will use biomass for their baseload energy production to get the daily energy they need to produce all day, all night. And then they will capture wind and solar and store it and use that for their peakers as they need to produce more energy. And that can work really well. When we look at the total energy demand globally, wind, solar, and biomass don't get us there, at least not short term. So we're going to need other options. We need to look at hydro, and we need to look at thermal, and we need to look at fission and fusion. But we're also going to continue to need oil and gas and coal for some time, probably for decades. When you look at current energy demand forecasts, over the next couple of decades, we're probably going to have to increase our current use of oil and coal in order to meet the growing energy demand. Even if we focus on really accelerating renewables, we're still not going to get off fossil fuels for decades. And that's really because the energy demand is exploding so fast with the electrification of everything and AI and crypto and data centers. I think we really will see a doubling of energy demand in the next 25 years. And so right now, today, the answer is we need all energy sources. What are your local resources? Use those local resources. Decades, 3-4 decades from now, if we can go pure fusion, that would be brilliant. And I hope we get there, and we might get there. But that's not a reality today.
Okay, so now looking at Woodchuck, you said something which surprised me, which is a plastic wrap, which is wrapped around the pallets and used almost everywhere, cling film and all that. So apart from that, what has surprised you most about the value operating Woodchuck, doing this business, about the value that can be extracted from these materials that we usually throw away?
Well, So it's different based on your geography. So Europe has been trying to go to zero landfill for quite a while, and there are certain company or countries that are already zero landfill, and they're kind of ahead of the North America in terms of processing those materials. The United States isn't there yet. We still send a tremendous amount to landfills, but there's a lot more awareness now, and we're getting a lot more global leadership from kind of global enterprises that operate, not just in North America or not just in Europe, but they operate everywhere. So how can they take the efficiencies and the cost reductions that they're generating by better material management in their other countries and bring that to the United States? And that's becoming more and more important as the landfills in the United States are getting full. Nobody wants a new landfill certified near them. And right now today, a given landfill might be 30 to 40% wood by volume. There's a ton of wood in there. So if we can simply divert wood and no longer send wood to landfills, that will extend the life of the existing landfills, give us a little more margin of error to figure out the rest of the waste problem. And all of that wood, wood is very easily transformed into a number of different outcomes, whether that's new particle board or press board that can be used in furniture or construction, or if it's for energy production with carbon capture or other industrial products or hydrogen production. Wood is a really versatile, fantastic product. And if you think about it, wood was actually the very first energy source. When man first domesticated fire, that was wood. Wood has literally been our energy source since the beginning of mankind's initial development. And it still is today, and it's still incredibly diverse and can be used in so many different things. So we just need to do a better job of managing our materials and getting the highest best use out of all these materials. And it can really drive us to a true circular economy.
Okay, so now beyond the direct benefits, I know you mentioned earlier that companies are seeing up to 30% reduction in their waste management costs. What other maybe secondary economic benefits have you seen from companies that adopt this approach of waste management?
Yeah, so just to double tap on that first one real quick, when you reduce a company's waste hauling costs, waste hauling is a cost of doing business. You have to haul your waste, right? So if we can reduce their waste hauling costs, whatever savings we generate for them, that falls straight to the bottom line. That's pretty impactful. But then yes, what are the secondary benefits? And what we're finding is when we work with companies, then we provide to them the detailed reporting of exactly what we're doing with their materials and the total amount of carbon that is avoided and the clean energy that's produced. That's kind of like chocolate to their marketing teams and to their sales teams, right? They love that stuff, and they get a lot of mileage out of that, which can increase their sales and increase their margin share. It helps them to differentiate a better product to the market because consumers do care about that. And I would say it's kind of like the Made in the USA label. Like if you take a survey, like 8 out of 10 Americans will say that they love Made in the USA and they'll buy more if it's Made in the USA. Statistically, that doesn't really bear out. At the end of the day, people buy the thing that's cheaper, right? Or it's more of a quality versus price decision. But all things equal, like if you can get the same product at the same quality at the same price, and one's made in the USA and one isn't, then they'll buy the USA product. And I think we're seeing the same thing in sustainability. People like sustainability. They like the idea of reduced cost, improved efficiencies, reduced landfill usage. People like those ideas, and it's non-political. Everybody agrees with that. Efficiency, cost reduction, reduced landfill. That's non-political. Everybody's on board. But they want cost savings too. And we kind of talked about this very early on. If you do sustainability well, it should be a cost reduction because you are driving efficiencies and you're turning waste into value. So sustainability done well, sustainability done correctly should be a cost reducer. And when you bring sustainability to a client with cost reductions, that makes it a pretty easy decision. If we can reduce your cost and we can simultaneously reduce your carbon, that's a win-win. That works really well.
All right, so for listeners who have listened to this episode, they've learned a couple of things like I have about the plastic wrap, about the way the wood is sorted, about pallets, and so many other things. If is there anything that you would like to share with listeners of this Green Tech Pulse that I haven't asked about or that we haven't covered?
Um, well, I would say examine your waste streams. Be aware of what you really have and where it's really going. Don't be afraid to ask your waste hauler, where is this dumpster going? What are you doing with it? Because I think right now there's a lot of lack of information. There's a lack of transparency. The one thing that Woodchuck really wants to bring to the market is, first of all, we want to bring new options that drive efficiencies, reduce costs, drive renewable energy sources, but we also want to drive transparency. So by tracking everything and reporting on everything, we can really help people understand what is happening to these materials and what are the potential positive outcomes they can get by paying attention to it. So ask the hard questions and let's drive the future that we want by being informed and making good decisions.
Perfect. So for listeners, for people watching who want to continue this conversation, who want to learn more from you, who want to probably use Woodchuck in their factories, their manufacturing warehouses and co, what's the best way they can reach you?
Come to our website, woodchuck.ai. And it's not woodchuckai.com, it's woodchuck.ai. Woodchuck.ai. Check out our website. Happy to connect with you there. There's a simple way to connect with us right through the website. You can see some cool videos on how the technology works. So yeah, visit woodchuck.ai and check it out.
All right, so Woodchuck.ai, that will be in the show notes, that will be on the screen for those watching on video. So thank you so much for coming on Greentech Pulse today, Todd.
Thanks, Peter. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And for the listeners, I hope you learned as much as I have from this episode. Every episode of this podcast teaches you something new in the green tech space. So once you're done with this and you've shared it with someone else you know it would help, go through the rest, get educated, learn more about making the planet more sustainable. Until next week, I'm back to a brand new episode. See you.